Hello and welcome back to LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. My name is Peter Murphy Lewis and I'm joined with my co-host Victoria Rama. Today we are going to be talking with Wendy Simmons. She is the Director of Quality Assurance at Mission Senior Living. She's based in Nevada. Wendy, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter and Victoria. It's a real treat to be with you today.
Fantastic. Wendy, I like to get started off with your initiation story. I've interviewed more than 500 hours of long-term care leaders in the U.S. in the last year, and everybody has a unique story. Will you please introduce us to how you first got into long-term care, and feel free to go into the details as much as you like.
Okay, and interrupt me if I'm talking too much. Actually, I was born into it. My parents started the first senior care in Nevada in 1948. And that was long before nursing homes and other kind of accommodations. And my mother was a retired nurse, and my dad, was a retired dairyman from Truckee, Nevada. And they started the care home in downtown Reno. So from the age of birth to actually current, I've been in the industry all my life. And curiously enough, my job when I was a small child in the home, we had it was a Victorian home in downtown Reno that took care of people being discharged from the hospital or old that needed support, elders. And so my job was to be the happy kid running around, making everybody joyful, eat candy as I sat in their laps and listened to their stories. And then eventually actually learning how to make beds with hospital corners and do all the chores of meal serving and personal care assistance all the way up through my initial journey. So I've been in the industry a long time.
I think that's wonderful how you grew up in this industry. And I personally grew up wanting to do the opposite of what my parents did. So I am curious to know what made you fall in love with this industry? What made you want to, keep growing with it?
People. I'm a people person. Absolutely love being able to have interactions with individuals. And although truth be known, I was also a horse person. So I showed competitively hunters and jumpers and stock horses, of course, being out here in the West. And my goal was to be a veterinarian. So I went to the university here pre-vet. However, my mother had a stroke and my dad died of a heart attack. They were old when I was born, by the way. They were 45 and 52. And so my course correction got readjusted back into running our facilities at the time. And, a little divine guidance. I'm doing exactly what I should do, but still have the animals. We still have the horses. And all of that said, as long as I can have people in healthcare, I love healthcare. I love learning new things in healthcare. And I love anatomy and physiology. And I really love troubleshooting with individuals with dementia. And I think that's where the overlap with animal care came about, because quite honestly, animals don't talk. They don't tell you what their problem is. You have to be an observer. You have to watch behaviors and interactions. And so all of my desires and needs to maintain curiosity and discovery still continues. I mean, I absolutely love what I do.
Wendy, I want to ask you, at what point did you realize you were going to be a lifer in long-term care? Was it a conscious decision where you at the age of 30 or 35 and you said, wow, I don't think I'm going to ever lead, or were there times where you dabbled outside of it and you just keep coming back?
That's a wonderful question. Thanks for that, Peter. I never felt I wasn't going to be a lifer. So, being involved in the industry, there's so much variety. It's not that always just being community-based or what the rest of the world calls facility-based, where you're actually in a facility. I designed and built a prototype before the greenhouse model of Dr. Thomas's up here in Reno in 1991, built a cottage concept and operated that. Oh, a remarkable little project I sketched out on a napkin with some friends and architects and a retired banker friend. So, you know, I don't know, it's just always been there in my heart, but there's so much variety in long-term care that you can branch and overlap and still come back and integrate into the actually day-to-day operations. So yeah, I did a few other things along the way, like head of regulatory compliance consulting, of course, working with veterans and Department of Veterans Services. So, you know, you have these little, it's like driving from here to San Francisco. You don't always take I-80. You can also kind of go down through Placerville in different ways, but you still end up in San Francisco.
Wendy, do you have a specific memory in your years of experience that you like to look back at and you feel just proud or just makes you smile?
Oh, absolutely. Multiple. I mean, we don't have enough time to really talk about all those. I'll tell you, the very first one was when I was 3, and I sat on the lap of William Cornwall, who was the senior engineer who designed the Oakland Bay Bridge. And I remember sitting at 3. Now imagine remembering something at 3. He smoked cigars, and so he'd always blow cigar smoke in my face. You know, back in the 50s, that's people did. And I would say, how'd you build the bridge? And imagine this. He said, design to function. And so those 3 words stuck in the back of my head. That's a very stellar memory. The other is, oh my goodness, the longest I've had a resident share our family life was 29 years. And the longest I've had a team member work with me was 27 years. So, you know, when you take a look at the journey of so many memories, it's, I think if I was to break it down, it would be every 10 years, it's a different dynamic. So if I was evaluating memories, it would be broken up into decades.
Wendy, I want to ask you about someone, whether they're a family member or someone in your work, in your professional career, that had a profound influence on you as a mentor in the way that you approach long-term care. Anyone that
Oh,
comes to mind and why?
yeah, my mother. And I'll tell you why. In addition to being an innovator and starting care facilities, she also had a massive stroke. And so I mentioned that to you. I took care of her for 9 years at home post stroke. So I was a family caregiver in addition to owning and operating care facilities at the same time. Put me into dual roles. She was brilliant. She was innovative. She was a force to be reckoned with. And when she hit a big disability like she hit with her stroke, it was probably one of the most influential, true core gut level, hands-on caring for somebody 24/7, 365 for 9 years. So the other one was my 26-year older than me sister, Dr. June Abbey. She was 26 years older than me. My current living sister is 21 years older than me. She's 93. Now you know my age. And both of those have been such amazing mentors. But Junie my older sister looked for the simplest solution to complex problems and was quite an innovator. Believe it or not, she developed the bladder alarm for quadriplegics, the IVAC system that we use in hospitals now for IVs. So when you have mentors like that, but the object is to not make it difficult, to make it simple and to make it happen. So I think those 3 individuals have been my most significant mentors. But everybody we touch, Peter, we learn from if we just bother to listen.
I love that. I think that's so smart and it's true. Wendy, going into Mission Senior Living, I would love for you to tell us what is so unique about it and the way of, you know, they run their organization, but also their culture and how they just how they make seniors feel so special.
Well, let me tell you my discovery of Mission Senior Living. And it began a little over 8 years ago when I first met Darryl Fisher, the president and founder of Mission Senior Living, along with his great partners, Mike Dines and Sarah Green. I met him actually when I was head of the regulatory agency for the state. And we had lunch, and I thought, this man is pretty darn special. And in that regard, over the course of time, I have done independent quality reviews for them while I had other jobs, other work assignments. And there's something very special about that leadership team. I mean, it's beyond special. It's actually even spiritual. I'll tell you, there's a connection. But when I decided to retire from my third job, which was the Department of Veterans, Sarah called me and said, would you be willing to work part-time for us and 20 hours a week and expand on what you've done for us intermittently for quality reviews? And I said yes. And I have to tell you something. Even though I had worked for them for 8 years doing IQRs, and I knew their philosophy of operation and their core values and their true moral compass. They have a great moral compass. Their mission, values, and principles, the MVPs that they have, curiously enough, aligned with what I had never expressed as my operational philosophy all the years that I've been in healthcare. So it has been a true joy to work with them. You got to remember, this is my fourth retirement job. I fail at retirement. So, this is the fourth time. And quite honestly, they are the only individuals and the only company at this part of my life that I will work with. They're just truly special people. And their reason for providing senior care is not dollar. It's a business, yes, but it's not dollar driven. It's how do we improve lives of those who we can touch.
Wendy, I wanted to ask you specifically about why you have failed so many times at retirement. I'm interested from the personal level. What is it about long-term care that that continues to make you stumble and come back? And then also professionally, what is it about Mission Senior Living that you just want to be here for the long term?
Thank you so much for that question, because I've asked myself that too. Mentioned it earlier. It's people have to be able to have contact with people. COVID was a killer when we were in Zoom land for 2 years. And with Department of Veterans, I love touching my veterans. I created some great programs for the state with Department of Veterans, but I got to have that hands-on. However, when we talk about failing at retirement, I have to have my old people fix. I actually have to, personally, I have to be able to go in and give a hug. My business was called Home of the Hugs. That was its tagline. And so it's to be able to go in and have that contact. But team development, the ability to, in my role with Mission Senior Living, to do the med tech training, to do the hands-on mentoring of working with team members, so that their role of caring and serving is interactive with each other, but also with the residents. So I think I'm a giver by nature. And I love to share what I know, but I learn every day from those that I have the chance to share with. So I think that's it.
I wanted to ask you to take off your humble hat for a minute and tell me what's something that you've done with Mission that you are so proud about, that if we're going to put something on your tombstone that you've done in long-term care for Mission, what is it going to be?
Oh my goodness, that's a very deep question.
I find that leaders in long-term care are too humble, so I have to be very direct and use the word that they told us in Sunday school when we were 6 years old, and put on your humble hat. I'm asking you to take it off.
Oh geez, what would I want on my tombstone? Well, I like that question. I gotta work on that one for the future. I would say she made a difference. Did
Any
I
specific?
stump you?
Yeah, you did. You stumped me. I want to ask you a follow-up on it. And what is one specific program or one specific team where you feel like that difference is tangible and you could explain it to us?
Oh, I think the one specific program is, we all know we serve the role every day that we touch an elder or a senior, to validate that they are still important in the world. Because the aging process isn't kind that way. It's one of loss, and individuals feel that they no longer have value. So I do think we know, those of us that work in the industry, that we validate, for want of a better word, that they still are significant in the world. Not just that they matter, but they have a purpose and they have the ability to contribute. What I like to believe that I'm doing when I'm working with team members, younger individuals, next generation caregivers, those of us that are going to actually be working, it is that they need to key into that they need to really understand how significant their role is. It's not a task. It's really more uh, uh, expressing that individual matters as an aging individual.
Wendy, Darryl Fisher is going to be on the podcast with us in a month or so. And, I'm fascinated by his work. I've seen many of his press releases. I've told his PR person that if he ever comes to Wichita, I want to visit him when he goes to a facility. Can you, for those who don't know him, which is few and far between, because when I mention his name that he's coming, be like, oh yeah, I know who he is. Tell me about his leadership and why you like to work with him.
Well, first of all, when I'm doing med tech training at the central office or the home office, and he walks into a room, and I've got 14 students in the room with me, and I say, I want you to meet this really amazing individual who is a president of the company. And his first comment out of his mouth is, I am not, president is a title. I don't want you to say it again, because it elevates me beyond the real value of the company. Darryl, like me, grew up in the industry. So, I mean, he's plunged toilets, he's repaired doors, he's done all of those things. And I think that's another connection that I have with him. He's brilliant. And he is dedicated, and he is so committed to improving lives, and his passion is genuine. I mean, it is as genuine as he is tall. So for those individuals that have a chance to meet him in person, when you get a chance, I mean, he's 6'5", but he's not, oh man, he is just an incredible individual who is doing senior living for the right reasons, recognizing it has to be a successful business. But and by the way, just so you know, I did some compliant consulting for the state. So I went into 165 communities throughout the state, long-term care, nursing home, and assisted living. There is only one community that has the true heart and pulse that I have found of why we're in the industry of serving those who have raised us and who have lived before us, and that's Darryl and Mission. And so that's why I'm just so pleased and touched to be a part of it.
Is that Darryl flying over?
It probably is. That's another thing, guy. He has that biplane, and he also did that ageless, aviation dreams, it was called initially, but where World War II veterans was his goal, to fly in that biplane. I've witnessed that. I've been in the hangar watching the effect that again, that goes back to the significance of an individual's life. Regrettably, when a person gets old and frail and they start to break down a little bit, it's a constant reminder of what you can't do when you're aging and old and infirm. I've seen Darryl in his big 6'5" frame get somebody out of a wheelchair up into the cockpit of that plane and fly them. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And it's not just that he flew them.
Awesome.
It's not just that he flew them. It's that he let them discover that they still can do something totally amazing. And that's kind of the mission way. And what a treat for me to just play a small role in that kind of a purpose.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so wonderful. Wendy, when it comes to your leadership style, how would you describe it?
Wow. I would say mentoring more, the leadership style, really assessing and evaluating and trying to key into each individual's needs. I'm going to roll back to the basic biology of working with animals. I also had the privilege of training some horses that individuals said would never amount to anything and have them go up to championship level in competitions. So, it's reading the individual and trying to key into what strengths can be developed in that particular individual team member. So I think that's a leadership style. It's probably mentoring.
I love that you say that you work a lot with animals, because my grandma always used to tell me that people that care about animals, they're real true hearted people. And so I think that's really awesome.
Thank you for that, Victoria. Well, I did have the honor. I mean, I bought a horse that was supposedly going to quote unquote kill me, and turned that horse into a champion. So, and it's not, I'm not competitive as much as I like to develop. I like to develop what hidden talents might still be in a creature or a team member.
Yeah. When it comes to the future of long-term care, I'm interested in what your thoughts are of someone who had so much experience in this industry and you've seen it evolve throughout the years. Is it a positive, like, are there positive thoughts, negative thoughts, and what are the elements that would affect whether the future of long-term care is positive or negative?
Well, let me give you the realistic. In 1991, assisted living didn't exist. Particularly, it did. But I had the good fortune of being on the Founders Council of Assisted Living Federation of America with Paul Clausen, who had all the Sunrise properties, and he developed those. And now it's Argentum is the National Trade Association. But that said, that was when assisted living emerged as a model as a result of consumer demand. They wanted something different than the traditional nursing home. And, quite honestly, the traditional nursing home has value. It has merit. I credit the veterans VA system with coming up with what are called the community living center models. And that was my job with the Veterans Department, by the way, was to build a new prototype design of nursing homes here. And we really have an amazing one. It's got a restaurant. It's got all kinds of crazy things in it that were really a lot of fun. Where do I see the future of assisted living going and long-term care? The greatest weakness we had before COVID and before we lost team members and people willing to work anywhere was we weren't developing enough bench. And I'm a real believer in bench strength. We haven't, as an industry, grown enough talent in the field to staff and continue to successfully operate. I think there's a future, definitely retirement communities, of course, and assisted living communities, because we're all getting older and we're going to need that supported living. But my greatest concern for many years, not just the last 10 years, but many years dating back almost to 91, when we started to explode as an industry, is building that talent pool that can come in behind. Remember, I've been an administrator for 47 years. And I built people underneath me. So when I stepped away, hopefully it would sustain. I don't see the bench strength. Much like football, you got to have two quarterbacks on the bench waiting to come in case something happens to the key player. We haven't grown that, and that's my only worry for the industry. It's needed. I think it's got a future. It's really, what are we doing to do that staff development? The second part of that is, what are we doing to excite them to want to work with seniors? I mean, like Peter, you did that CNA stint. That means that you cared and you had that heart and you wanted to invest and discover, even though you're not changing briefs and giving showers right now, but you wanted to discover that. What can we do to have that understanding? I think we're hiring as an industry, not just Mission, because Mission's pretty darn thoughtful, but I'm on the Commission on Aging for Nevada too. What are we doing as an industry to cultivate curiosity and passion? Because we're not growing it at home anymore, like me and Darryl.
That leads me into kind of the next question, Wendy, because I think one of the ways I think there's two specific ways that we could definitely do better as an industry to attract young. One is tell them the intangibles that you get from this industry. Learning from seniors is invigorating. I remember when I was finishing my clinicals, I would do a 12-inch stint and come home, and it would be 8 o'clock at night, and you would think that I would be sleepy. After I have a 5-year-old, I have an amazing wife, and I would try and keep her awake till midnight telling her stories. She's like, "What's wrong with you? You should be tired." And I said, "No, something about this that it fills you with energy." So I think that's step one, is tell young people about the intangibles. But the second thing is, sometimes when you're 16 years old or you're 24 years old, you don't know that the job is made out for you. And as leaders, we need to tell these young people, you would be great at A, B, and C because you have X, Y, and Z. And so my question for you, Wendy, is what do you think are the attributes of a great frontline caregiver? And so assume that there's, Brad is a 16-year-old down the street from you, and he has these attributes. What are you going to tell him? You have this, and why you're going to be great as a caregiver?
I love that. And I love what you just said too, because you dialed it in perfectly, Peter. For a young man, you did a great job.
I feel old.
I think that the first attribute is empathy. I think the second one is considerate, to be a considerate person. The third one is to get out of devices and actually look people in the eye and want to discover. So, for example, when I'm teaching the med tech class, I will ask individuals, why are you doing this? Because I ask them what they did before, and they'll tell me, well, I worked for Panasonic, or I worked for Tesla or Amazon, because we have all those companies here in the area. And I said, so obviously something was missing in your world. And they will say, yeah, moving boxes isn't gratifying. So they're looking for that self gratification, that inner need, that inner desire to both contribute, but to feel good at the end of the day when they went home, like you just discussed when you said you keep your wife up at night, trying to tell her all these great things. We compartmentalize, I think, today, and I could be wrong, but my observation is we compartmentalize into our time management as young people, and we become more autonomous. And I think the lack of really the engagement. Remember, I told you I was high touch at the beginning of this conversation. If we could embrace technology, but get people back into high touch. So just a quick sidebar, when I did the vet's home, I put in a system that was very, very user-friendly so that the caregiver or the CNAs could spend more time in the rooms. And it was a device-driven system, but they actually had a picture of the resident. They went in, they provided their care, they logged into the device now, and they didn't go back and sit anywhere at a desk, so they could spend more time with the engagement. What I hear from our team members that I have the honor of working with, they say that. They say, I love just spending time with the resident. providing the resident isn't difficult. The difficult ones, yeah, well, then we figure out how to make their life more pleasant and yeah. So those would be the things. It would be the empathy, it would be the curiosity and the engagement and the willing to invest. And when I hear that, then I know we've got a little unpolished diamond that we can grow.
You mentioned difficult ones. I'm specifically drawn to the difficult ones. I'm guessing it's karma paying me back for being a difficult son or something like that. You mentioned you're drawn towards dementia. And before we move into rapid fire questions, Wendy, I want to ask you what you've learned about yourself from working in long-term care, or more specifically working with dementia patients.
Oh,
Residents.
wow. Oh, we don't have enough time to really go into that, Peter. But what have I learned? I've learned to listen more and talk less. I've learned to validate what's not being said. In other words, there was an old lady called Naomi File who did validation therapy back in my early years of all of this. But it's when an individual with dementia is looking for fluffy, what is fluffy, so it's to ask questions, is to let them self-express, and then find out that fluffy is a dog they hated, and because they threw it out the door because it peed on the carpet, it got run over by a car, and their kids hate them forevermore because the dog got killed, and that's why they don't visit anymore. I mean, there's all these little hidden discoveries that you can go. So listen and discover, and then support.
Wendy, I'm going to go into some rapid fire questions. I can tell you have good answers, but if one of these you don't feel comfortable, just tell me pass. Are you ready?
Sure, go for it.
All right. Do you have a favorite failure of yours that punched you in the gut and you didn't know if you were going to get up, but you did, and you're a stronger woman because of it?
Yeah, caring for mother. I didn't key into her as much as I should have, but I was in my 20s and she was difficult. So yes.
Next one. If you could have a giant billboard anywhere with anything on it that millions of people would see, what would it say and why?
Talk less, care more.
You're really good at this. I feel like you were prepared for this, or if you watched it before.
No, I wasn't.
All right. And my last one as we wrap up is, what advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world?
Explore, don't lock in.
That's good. Wendy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on LTC Heroes. It was a pleasure. Your passion for your organization and for you're talking about Darryl makes me more excited to have him on the podcast. And hopefully one day I'll meet you out on the West Coast.
Oh, I hope so. If you come this way, you look me up, okay?
I will do.
All right. I'll put you on my horse.
I wish we would have heard your snoring dog in the background instead of Darryl's plane flying over. But say hi to your dog, and thank you so much for your amazing personality.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the honor of being with you today. Victoria, wow, you're way across the world. What a treat to have you. And isn't this great? As much as I say get away from the screen, this is an awesome venue. Thank you. It's been a blessing.
Look forward to talking to you soon.
You too.
Want to connect with leaders in long-term care? Go to www.ltcheroes.com to join our community on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get exclusive access to marketing tips, SOPs, and insights from prominent voices in the industry. Only at ltcheroes.com.